Hi friends. Okay, so for day 3 of distance learning, we are still going to do review. I think tomorrow we are going to start something new, or maybe I'll wait till Monday to do new content. But for today we are doing another Delta Math. You guys have been doing good with these, so I just wanted to kind of continue this while we're still adjusting to this. So today we are doing 8 questions and finding trig ratio, giving another in all 4 quadrants. So let's take a look. Given that tangent of theta is negative 21 over 20, and that angle theta terminates in quadrant 4, then what is the value of sine? So as soon as you start seeing sine and cosine and tangent, the one big thing that we always should write on our page is SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA helps us remember the ratio of sides, which you guys practiced yesterday. So for this, they are giving me a quadrant. So next what I'm going to do, they're telling me this is in quadrant 4. So I'm going to draw my triangle in quadrant 4. Again, always connecting it to your x-axis. And this is our reference angle theta. So they're telling me that tan is negative 21 over 20. So I know that tangent is our opposite over adjacent. So if this is my angle here, this is my hypotenuse, this is my opposite, this is my adjacent. So if I'm going to label this opposite over adjacent, my opposite is 20. And my opposite is 21. And my adjacent is 20. Now, there is a negative there, so you need to figure out which one is negative. So we need to figure out, like, which one's going in a negative direction. So if I was to go this way on my axis, is that a negative direction? No. If I'm going down on my y-axis, that is a negative direction. So this is going to be the negative. That is negative 21. Okay. This question is asking me for sine. So sine is opposite, which I do know, over hypotenuse, and I don't know my hypotenuse, so I need to find my hypotenuse. Again, if we have a right triangle, which this is, in order to find that third side, I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Again, the one thing that it matters where it goes is my c. So 20 and negative 21 does not matter where it goes. So 20 squared plus negative 21 squared equals c squared. Now notice I did put that 21 in parentheses. When you put that into your calculator, you need to know when you square a negative number, a negative times a negative gives you a positive. So please make sure that you do get a positive number there when you type that into your calculator. Otherwise, you typed it in wrong. So 20 squared is 400 plus negative 21 is 441 equals c squared. If I do 400 plus 441, I get 841 equals c squared. I don't want c squared, I want just c, so I'm going to take the square root. Cancels out your squared, and when I take the square root of this, I get an answer of 29. So I get 29 equals c. So what I would like you to do is once you find that c value, let's label that on our triangle. So this is 29. Again, when you take the square root, though, this is plus or minus 29. But since I'm finding that hypotenuse, your hypotenuse is always going to be positive. Only your two legs, so the adjacent and the opposite, will be negative. The hypotenuse is always positive. So let's go back to what our question is. They want the sine of theta. So again, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So sine of theta, my opposite is negative 21, and my hypotenuse is 29. So when I enter in this question, you could do negative 21, and then when you do divide, it'll make it into a fraction, and then 29. And let's submit our answer. All right, I'm going to try 1 or 2 more of these with you. If you feel comfortable at this point, because again, this is a review topic, you could absolutely start just doing the Delta Maths. You don't have to watch this whole video. But if you are feeling a little uncomfortable, please watch another example or 2. So let's go to next problem. They're giving me that cosine is negative 40 over 41, and it terminates in quadrant 2. What is the value of sine? So again, I like to always write this. So SOHCAHTOA. And then I like to draw my angle. So here we go. This is in quadrant 2. Again, always drop it down to your x-axis, and your reference angle is inside here. So if I am giving cosine, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So if I have negative 40 over 41, this is my adjacent, and this is my hypotenuse. So that is their way of giving you clues to label this triangle. So let's figure out what all of these sides are on my triangle. Here's the angle I'm talking about. So this is my opposite, my hypotenuse, and my adjacent. So let's label all the information I know. My adjacent is 40, and my hypotenuse is 41. Now, there is a negative sign. Let's determine which one's going to be the negative sign. Hypotenuse is always positive, so it's not going to be the hypotenuse. It does need to be this adjacent side. And again, if we think about this, I'm going in this direction. That is a negative direction. So that's why it's a negative 40. Okay, what are they asking me for? They're asking me for sine. So I do need to know my opposite over the hypotenuse. So I have a triangle. It's a right triangle. I need to find that third side of that triangle. So let's use SOHCAHTOA. In order to do SOHCAHTOA, I do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b does not matter, so I'm going to leave this one as just a squared. I'll solve for that one. Plus, I'm going to do negative 40 equals 41. Both of these are squared. So a squared plus, again, if you are typing this into your calculator, please make sure in parentheses, just like I have it on your screen here, you are doing negative 40 and then squaring it. And we get 1600 equals 41 squared is going to be 1681. Now I'm solving for a, which is on this side, so I need to move everything to the other side. These cancel out. I end up with a squared equals, now if I subtract those, I end up with 81. Again, I need to solve for a, not a squared, so I'm going to take the square root, and I end up with a, and think about what the square root of 81 is. Now, again, plus or minus 9. So in this case, since I am going up, that distance is a positive because it is going up on your axis. So that is a positive 9. So let's take a look. I'm looking for sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So if I'm finding sine, write it down here. Theta is equal, my opposite is 9, and my hypotenuse is 41. Now, just going back to what we did yesterday, if we think of this, all students take calc. If they're telling me I am in quadrant 2, then I know that my sine should be positive, because in that quadrant, sine is positive. So if you weren't sure if 9 should be negative or if the 41 should be negative, like if you're getting confused on when it's positive and negative, don't worry about it. At the very, very end, draw this picture, all students take calc, and then make a decision. Or do that in the beginning when you say, hey, I'm looking for sine. Okay, I'm in quadrant 2, so sine needs to be positive. This is just a little double check at the end, like, okay, the number I type in needs to be a positive number, which is going to be 9 over 41. Okay, I'm going to do one more with you guys, just so that you feel comfortable with this. So they're giving me tangent and they're asking me for cosine. So this one I'm just going to show you at the beginning. Let's determine, all students take calc. If I'm in quadrant 3, cosine in this case is negative. So we know that once we type in our answer at the end, I should end up with a negative number that I'm typing in. If I didn't, then I did something wrong with my signs and just put a negative number there so that it is correct. So let's now draw a triangle. I am in that quadrant 3. So this is what an angle looks like in quadrant 3. And I attach it up to my x-axis to make my right angle. And there's my reference angle. So tangent, again, coming from SOHCAHTOA, tangent is my opposite over adjacent. So let's label what all of my sides are. Here's my opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. Tangent is my opposite, so that means this is 12, and my adjacent is 35. I want to find my hypotenuse, so let's do 12 squared plus 35 squared equals x squared. Let's actually square all of these numbers, so I get 144 plus 35 squared is 1225 equals x squared. Let's add these. I get 1369 equals x squared. Again, I want to solve for just x, so let's take the square root. Don't forget that it is now plus or minus, and the square root of that 1369 is 37. I'm looking for my hypotenuse, so my hypotenuse is always positive, so I'm going to label my hypotenuse now a positive 37. And if I am looking for cosine, I know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So my adjacent is 35, and my hypotenuse is 37. Now, this is why I really like to do this checking at the beginning. Oh, that color is terrible. Checking at the beginning to figure out if this should have been positive or negative. At the beginning, I said cosine should be negative, but now I got an answer and cosine is positive. That doesn't really make sense. But if we look at how we labeled this, in this quadrant, tangent is positive, and they gave me 12 over 35, and that's a positive number. Great. But if we look at the direction that these sides are going in, 35 is going this direction. So this really should be a negative 35. And 12 is going this direction. So that really should be a negative 12. The reason why tangent is still positive is because if I do negative 12 over negative 35, that's going to give me a positive value. A negative divided by a negative gives me a positive. So how that changes this is I see my adjacent is negative 35. So this top number is going to be negative 35, not just 35. So when I type this in, I'm going to do negative 35 and divide that by 37. So please make sure you are looking at whether these functions are positive or negative in the quadrants, because when you submit these, you might get the correct value by doing Pythagorean theorem correctly, but maybe it will give you a different positive or negative value. So that's where that is coming in. If you still need some more help, after you do a question, all of this information comes up. So it tells you that tangent is opposite over adjacent, just like I showed you here. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. It helps you draw your picture. It shows you how to find the third side, how to label it, and then finally finding cosine. So using the information that they give you, I think you could also hit I to get a little more information. Like it'll tell you cosine is what we're trying to find, and this is my final answer. So use the tools that are on the Delta Math to help you. That's why I like using this as a resource. If you have any questions, the discussion board is open, so please submit any questions you have in the discussion board. And as always, myself and Mr. P are both available. Email us if you have any questions. All right, have a great one, guys. Bye.